And we are live. Welcome back to Aussies taking over the NBA. It is Friday night. The playoffs have started. We're going to be bringing you an overreaction show. We're going to overreact. We're going to get loose. A couple of pretty crazy games to start these playoffs. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it hasn't been all kind of one way, has it? It's been a little bit weird. It's got a little bit of a weird vibe out there, but yeah, we'll do some crazy overreactions.
We've already got a Bullocks-Stradamus too, prediction. But we'll go through that when we go through the Jazz and the Nuggets series so far. As always, you can like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, on iTunes, Podcast Addict, and SoundCloud. We're coming to you live on Twitch now. We're giving the Twitch thing a go, so we're back again to keep streaming. So we'll put these episodes up on audio format and on YouTube after we are live. But as always, yeah, like, share, and subscribe. We'll be bringing you some more playoff coverage as the playoffs continue. First thing we're going to talk about is the Celtics and the 76ers. That's a series that maybe has kind of just gone the way it should go.
Yeah, the way it should go. Look, I had real hope that the 76ers could pull something out of their ass and match up against Boston well. And in theory, they should, but it doesn't seem like it's gone like that. Man, it's just, I kind of watched those two games, and then I watched the Jimmy Butler, JJ Redick podcast highlights about why they kind of both left. And you just, in those two games, you can sum up why Jimmy Butler and JJ Redick left. And it's just the coaching staff. You can see now they can't defend the pick and roll. They don't play any pick and roll. The set defenses are just, if you haven't got a guy driving crazy drives and collapsing the defense, then there's no shooting. It's kind of all breakdown play shots or swinging the ball into Embiid in the corner. And Embiid can't play 42 minutes a game, man. It just doesn't work. He's a high impact player. He plays short bursts, comes on, makes an effort, then gets off. And Horford's been terrible. Tobias Harris has been underwhelming. None of the bench have scored, and there's just really no one to go to. So what do? You can't rely on Alex Burks, Raul Neto, and Furkan Korkmaz to win you a championship. It's literally just been Embiid featuring a bunch of bums. And Shake's been good in stretches. He shot the ball okay, but it hasn't really taken over the game. And there's no clutch. And you know what? There's some young Celtics players that are good. Jason Tatum probably should be an all-star. Jaylen Brown's had a much better year. Kemba Walker operates in the mid-range, which just kills Philly. And you know what? They can afford to give up 40 points to Embiid a night because no one else can do anything. And they can just run around Embiid all game. So that's my rant about that
justified,
matter.
I think, as a neutral watching this, the Philly, Philly did what we thought they were going to do. You just they come out, use Embiid, punch him in the mouth, and then hopefully try and regain some momentum. Well, that kind of happened in the first game. They regained a little bit of momentum sort of later on, but Embiid both games has come out, punched Boston in the mouth, and you're just perfect. And then in the second quarter, you're just oh yeah, Embiid's just totally gassed, and he probably has to sit the whole quarter, or you're not getting the same impact. And we all get it. We all looking at it going, yeah, but I guess how do we manage around this? What do we do? I'm just looking at the series so far, and Josh Richardson's the second top scorer with 18 points. Tobias Harris, the main sort of should be the second scorer, only 14 points per game over the two games, and that's just not good enough, man. Not for 180
million, man.
I think just as a second guy, regardless of what he's paid, I'm looking at him and I'm just that's just not good enough. And to go into the playoffs with, I don't know if this guy's going to be good enough. That's pretty.
It's kind of the Eric Bledsoe of Philly. He's kind of really good regular season player, gets you there, scores a lot of games, just consistent scorer, and then gets to the playoffs and just yeah, I'm out, boys. I have no defensive tactics whatsoever. Can't play in the pick and roll. Just kind of, lug shots over dudes as they dry into a clogged lane and hope for the best. And that's really what Tobias Harris is. He's always been that way, but it kind of works when the defense is a little bit more lackadaisical, in the regular season. And it works in a home crowd where you've got, 20,000 nut Philly fans just screaming your name down, and you kind of get a boost off that. But, when there's no fans in the stadium, there's nothing to feed off. and you can't really bring what the team needs, how do you justify $180 million spend? You know, you can hide Tobias Harris well when Simmons is on the court, because Simmons is like two players defensively. Let's be real. Like, he can defend so many spots and he's so quick in transition. You put him and Tybal on the court and you can lock down a team for the whole like last 6 minutes of a game. Like, they just won't score, or they'll find it very hard to score. But Harris is a pretty average defender. Richardson's probably a little bit better than Harris. If you can't score and you can't defend, then what are you doing on the floor? He's almost unplayable in this series when you have a look at it, because he's taking 14, 15 shots a game and scoring 14 points. Unless he pulls something out of his ass game 3, it's kind of, I think it's going to be a whitewash, a 4-0 sweep, and that'll be the last we probably see of Al Horford, Brett Brown, and a few of the other Philly natives.
So Tobias Harris, he's 10 of 29 so far. 5 hasn't hit a 3 in this series yet. Philly not necessarily shooting that many threes. They've shot 48 to Boston 74 so far. That's a symptom of why they aren't playing well, I think, is because there's no style that gets these shooters in rhythm, gets them shooting threes, gets them shooting on the floor.
There's no passes. Nah. There's no facilitators in the team. Raul Neto is a scoring first point guard. Trey Burke, who you had as a backup point guard, score first point guard. You needed TJ McConnell, man. You needed the guy that could just, all right, I'm just going to get in the mid-range, score 6-8 points, but I'm going to facilitate and I'm going to be a pest. And yeah, Richardson can't pass. Harris can't pass. Embiid, isn't really, that's not his game. His game was a lot of, a 1-2 kind of screen setting for JJ Redick over the last couple of years.
But that's where, right. All right, they're missing Simmons. We should sort of start that as a caveat. That's another defender to throw at Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. And Hayward obviously is at that ankle injury. I think that was the other ankle this time. Not having Simmons there really stops their defensive ability to get stops on that end, because you could throw him against all three of those guards for the Celtics, and you're obviously going to lock down their team and be a lot better offensively. You can't go a whole season sorting out how to play with Simmons and Embiid to then go into the finals without Simmons and just being like, right, we now have to build this offense to play like Joel. We need to get Joel Embiid scoring and playing like on the sort of downhill. Like I said to you before we started, getting him into these areas where it's not just expending insane amounts of energy doing these things, grabbing the ball, diving on the court, setting himself up, having to like wait for post-ups. I sent that little clip of you of Harris like calling for a screen. Harris is like, come over here. And he's like, nah, man. And this was I think this was in the second quarter. He's like, nah, I'm not setting a screen for you, man. Like, I'm not coming all the way out there. Yeah. And that's a worry. Like, I don't know how Philly can go from, all right, we need to, like we play with Simmons and Embiid. Now it's just like, right, let's just get Embiid these, perfect touches and make him play in this perfect system that gets the best out of him. Like, he still looks like he's just expending way too much energy, man, out there.
And that's it, because you know what? He's running in transition. Whereas if Simmons is on the floor, he doesn't have to run in transition, really. He doesn't need to get back, because you've got a guy who's 6'10", who can sprint the floor for 43 minutes a game. Like, there's the motor on that guy. I think that's what people don't realize, is that as soon as Boston speeds up, Simmons would be there to slow it down. And, with Tybal, they can really get stops and plays. But with Embiid on the floor and Horford and Harris, it's slow as fuck. It's so slow.
Feel free to swear.
And
it is.
It's horrible. It's horrible to watch, man. It's cringe. This is the culmination of 3 years of the process. Is terrible basketball. Like, you look at what they brought to the playoffs first year. They brought inexperience, but they brought some really there's some great moments, and there's Simmons and Embiid can work together, and they've got all these pieces they put around them, and they've just traded away everything for nothing, and it hasn't worked. I think there's a few people that need to fall on their swords, no matter what the outcome of the postseason is, because it doesn't work. Even if they magically beat Boston and get knocked out in the Eastern Conference Finals, there needs to be some changes. I think if you're going to build a team, you build them around 2 players, and you build them around 2 players with either a small backcourt that gives Embiid and Simmons a lot of space to move around the floor. But I think that the freak length experiment is over, and it doesn't really work.
It's just kind of a bit too slow, and we saw that going on to Boston. Like talking a little bit about Boston, both of those games they threw these second quarter punches where it's just like, all right, speed the game up, boys, and you see Philly can't really keep up with that. They don't like going in, like running in transition. They don't like when the game really speeds up. That's kind of where Tatum and Smart really did their work. If you look at, but if you look at their team, right, Kemba Walker, Tatum, and Brown and Smart, they're all established players who know who they are. You know what I mean? Like I know how to attack and defend. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing here. This is the player I am. And I think it's really noticeable that even though Kemba Walker came from the Hornets, not a guy who has like championship style pedigree, definitely has promise as a player, but you wouldn't say that he's like, this guy should win a championship one day. But at the same time, in this series, like he knows who he is and he knows exactly where to like hurt this team.
It's in the pick and roll in the mid range. So I'm just going to come off a high screen and shoot a 15-foot jumper. And I've said that's Philly's problem the whole time. Maybe it's a Bullock-Stradamus, but they can defend the 3-point line really well, but they have absolutely no capabilities outside the block and the 3-point line. And so teams operate on a high pick and roll and get to the rim downhill much easier because they can come around a screen. And Philly can't defend the pick and roll. I've said that all year. And they don't set any pick and rolls. Like it's kind of like everyone knows your kryptonite, yet you can't exploit the size you have. Like imagine setting a proper pick and roll for a big guy like Ingles and Gobert do it. It's like jam. It's jam for Ingles and Gobert. They go to that play 1 in every 4 plays. They're 2 relatively big guys. Gobert's massive and Ingles is not a shortstop. So why can't Embiid and Harris set, a 3-5 pick and roll? I don't understand. It mind boggles me that, and you know what? If Embiid sets a pick and roll, he's not playing post. He's not playing bang up basketball and expending so much energy running block to block in transition. And I watched that clip of Jimmy Buckets and JJ today, and I just thought, this 10 minutes sums up, the culmination of the process is that they got the right guy for the rebuild and the wrong guy for the championship. And it's kind of clearly becoming evident now that it's all been knee-jerk reactions to try and get the best pieces at the best time. But you know what? Sometimes these guys aren't the best pieces. Sometimes you got to look at, all right, we're built around 3 players, a big 3, whatever, and you haven't got a pure point guard in the team. You haven't got really one pure scorer, like a guy that can just go and play some ISO basketball. Harris kind of needs to get off the dribble or drive and drive and kind of hope, or come off the dribble, and you haven't got that. You also haven't got a guy that can shoot off a curl. Like you built this team around Simmons, Shamet, Saric, Covington, Redick. You built this team to just be shooters around Simmons and Embiid, and it got you that far. And then just to all give it away for nothing is kind of, for me, the combination of a disappointing season. I've said it's a disappointing season. Like they've lost so many bad games. They've been really strong at home, but just lost easy games on the road. And finishing up in 6th place is for a team of that pedigree and salary pretty pathetic.
Yeah. So overreaction. Bit emotional there.
A bit emotional, but 4-game sweep.
Whoa. No, I think Philly's going to win a game. I think they showed go back to that first game, that little run in the 3rd quarter where I watched that and I went, all right, like, they were tossing it into Embiid. They went to that small lineup after he came off the floor, and suddenly like they could play at the pace that Boston was playing at, and it kind of hurt Boston. Then they brought Embiid back. It all slowed back down again, and that's where Boston kind of pulled away. Jaylen Brown hit a couple of like crazy shots. I think Smart hit a couple of threes as well. No, he just hit the 1 3. And that was where I went, oh, right. Like they could exist against this Boston team with small ball. But the problem is like your stars in Harris and Embiid, like, are you going to say to them, all right, guys, you're going to have to sit an extra 7-8 minutes so we can put this small ball lineup on the court? Like, I don't think Philly's that team. Like, I think Philly will go down with Harris and Embiid playing the way they are, because that's kind of, that's what you do.
Go down with the sinking ship.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. To me, like, there's nothing wrong with them, going down on the Embiid Harris train. Like, you've lost Simmons. For me, I'd just be tossing the ball into Embiid the entire time and just saying, do not bother trying to shoot threes. Just always run to the block, toss it into him. It's just so taxing, though. They've just got some, some decent sort of wing defenders who can kind of get up under him. Smart. Brown's been pretty good in the post. Tice, look, they haven't been able to switch on to Tice and Kanter that much for him to dominate those two. And the whole act of doing that, I think, just it just gasses Embiid out, and that's part of the issue. Like, you just can't get him downhill. Looking at the minutes played, Kyle O'Quinn only 6 minutes in the series so far. Does he deserve to be that deep bench guy? I think he could get some more minutes in this team.
I think you kind of play him in that small ball lineup, man. He can facilitate. I think he's shown that in the bubble prelims, is that he can be that guy that facilitates, some movement of the ball. And I think he could potentially play on the same time as Embiid. He doesn't need to be a shooter, but there has to be someone there facilitating. And he looks like he's kind of that Bogut style, sharp eye passer that Jokic could potentially be. But in this series, Brown just goes to the same guys. It's been the same every playoff series. And when you don't have a guy like Simmons, which is, let's be face it, is kind of a Giannis clone in the way that defenders collapse on him and he can find open shooters. When you don't have that capability and you're going to like a traditional kind of early noughties lineup of basketball style, without a pick and roll, without a go-to scoring mechanism. And I don't know if you've noticed this whole series. There's no go-to scoring mechanism. You don't know where they're going to get their next bucket from.
Well, it's kind of Embiid, but you watch it and you just go, oh my God, like, get him the ball. Like, gee, like, how much contact is he taking? Like, you're not watching it just going, the ball goes into Embiid, he drops left, right. Oh, smooth, nice, get up the floor. Oh, it's back into Embiid, drop, left, right, score. Like, it's like the ball comes back out. They try to toss it to him. He's got to tussle. He's got to come back out on the weak side. And you're just like, oh, it's just such a grind. But having a look at these minutes played. So if you look at O'Quinn, Pell probably shouldn't be getting any minutes at all, in my opinion. Kyle O'Quinn, I think, can get more minutes. Mike Scott is on 8 minutes. But if you look at this Boston team, the two Williams and Langford have all played 20 minutes each. And those three are the kind of the level that O'Quinn, Pell, and Scott are at. And then if you look at like Ogilvy, Green, and Devontae Green and Taco Fall, they've just played some garbage minutes. I don't think Philly don't have that depth. They just don't have the depth in the middle section. Like they got the stars, and Harris has obviously not been playing that well. Simmons is out, but they don't have the depth in the middle part to sustain this team.
They've gone all in on a starting five, thinking that they're going to reduce their minutes in the playoffs. That's what this team was about, was built for the postseason, because their whole salary is built around a starting five. And so when that falls apart like it has, it's just like, well, let's pick up the pieces in next year. But I don't really want to see this team next year. I want to see something different.
Yeah, it's just a mess. Like, going back to you mentioned that podcast, and like what was really poignant was where Jimmy Butler was talking about, we just went in this room and we all just sat there, and then nobody said anything, and then we all just went and practiced. And he's just like, what the hell was that? Why would I go back in there? But the other thing too, like, Jimmy Butler has a reputation as being like a problem guy. But when he talks and when you hear his teammates talk about him,
he's not a problem. He just seems like he speaks his mind,
like,
and he's
maybe it's not like a problem, but he has like this aura and persona in the media landscape as being like difficult to work with, etc., etc. And that's it's hard, man. Like, this team, I get how you feel. It's weird, just weird to watch. It's strange to watch, and the way Brett Brown's got these guys playing, like, that's a worry too. Like, I feel like you're saying he's gonna get the boot. He's on the hot seat for sure. What do you reckon for the rest of this series? They win one, you reckon?
Nah, sweep, 4-zip.
Sweep. It's hard without the home fans. Like, obviously they've got a home game. Is it tomorrow, the game?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. Just looking at it now, 8:30 in the morning, 6:00 Jazz again. God, that's too early for me, man. Are any of these on SBS?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Nah, because those two early games aren't on ESPN in Australia. And it's like, oh man, like surely you can just play all games back to back ESPN. Come on, shell out for it, ESPN. But yeah, so I think they can win one. I think they might win this next one, just as a whoa, Philly, like they're back, and then it's just like, oh wait, they're not back. They lost the next two, and that was it. Yeah, no.
4-zip.
4? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Overreacting. That's good. It's a good overreaction. I like it. No, I think they're going to be all right. We'll move now to the Jazz.
Now
and
this is a
Nuggets.
series.
This is a good series, man.
This is a series I told you about. This is the best matchup for the Jazz, and there's some Bullock-Stradamus in here.
Here it is.
That Mitchell needed to score 50 points every night for them to win.
57 in game one.
So,
I'm just looking at 57 in game one. What did he have?
30 game
30. So, he scores 50, 57. He scores nearly 60. They lose. He scores 50 in game two. Scores 30 in game two, and they win. So, talk about game one, the overtime.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the Jazz, they need to win in regular time because they don't have the depth of players to play, overtime minutes. I think it's just too hard on their starters. Mate, Joe Ingles has been playing phenomenally well. So good. Really, really shooting the ball well, getting to spots, facilitating well. But again, this series is going to go the full distance. I think it'll go 7 games. I said it would be a better matchup. I didn't think that the Jazz would win so easily in that game too. I thought it would have been closer, but it's going to be a bit of a tussle each way. And I think if they can, Mitchell can just keep just dominating. Mike Conley is back in the bubble, but has to obviously do his quarantine. So I think he will miss out on the next 2 games from memory. So, if they can pull 1 or 2, I don't know if you even bring Conley. If the Jazz go up 3-1 here, I don't think you bring Conley back into the lineup. Like, why would you bother?
2-1, you mean, or 3-1? Or if
3-1.
they win, like they win the next 2?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
I've said all year he's a cancer. He seems to just, depreciate teams' value everywhere he goes. Not saying he's a bad guy or anything. I'm just saying that there's been some real integration problems this year. There was some integration problems in the start of the bubble. They won a couple of games, but he's not been, the same Mike Conley that you saw 3 or 4 years ago. He's kind of budget Mike Conley now. Discount Mike.
It's like having a look at the scoring, right? So Denver pretty much died in that third quarter in game 1. It was a 31-19 third quarter. But if you look at the fourth quarter, Mitchell had 22 points, so he kept them in this game. It's crazy, like his battle with Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray just went off in game 1. Where you're just like, wow, like Jamal Murray basically kept them in this game. What did he have in the end? He had 36 points, and you were just like, wow, plus 16, 36 points. Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell kind of on the same level. And you go to game 2, and Jamal Murray has 14 points, 6 of 13, only 4 assists, pretty average game. But, game 2 was kind of Michael Porter's game. And like suddenly in that game 2, you kind of saw what the Nuggets are at their worst or at their, in their struggles. And you kind of looked at it and went, wow, like they don't have that bounce back ability, or they don't have that fight ability in them. You know what I mean? Like you watched the Jazz in game 1, and the Jazz kind of had that fight where you were just like, ooh, they put the bit between their teeth. They got it back to overtime, took it to overtime. They really possibly could have even won that first game. But at the same time, you watch that Jazz in the second game, and they just collapsed and just died and walked off the court so easily.
Yeah, but Denver is one of those like weird anomaly teams where in just coming up against them every now and then in the East, you're like, oh, these guys are kind of hard to play because, they're kind of good shooters. They're a bit Chubb. Jokic is a freak passer, and you kind of don't. But in a 7-game series where you can work out their weaknesses, they're one of those teams that doesn't really go strongly. Like they can be out coached. You can get into that, and they can have off nights, and you can exploit that. where they don't find ways to win even on an off night. Like the Lakers, they'll find a way. This team will find a way to win on an off night. Like the Lakers didn't play particularly well. I mean, Portland was just abysmal today, but the Lakers didn't play particularly well. The Bucks didn't play particularly well. They find ways to win. Even the Raptors, they find ways to win. This is why their teams are, 55 wins plus or 50 wins plus. But Denver for me has always been that team that just like, you don't really know if it's equal, you don't really know going to the fourth quarter that they've got it. And over a 7-game series, if it does go the distance, you can see them being potentially outcoached in Game 7.
It's tough because I just look at that Denver team and it's like under the microscope. What really are you, Denver? And I just feel like that Denver team is just like, oh, we're just going to run away and lose. You know what I mean? Whereas I've seen other teams already where you put them under the microscope. Like this Jazz, I felt like the Jazz was like that as well. Like if you put the Jazz under the microscope, they're just like, oh, we're all right. We'll lose this. We don't mind. But Donovan Mitchell has just been so good in these 2 games that's kind of willed them. And the reliance on him, and Jordan Clarkson too, coming off the bench has been pretty good for him as well. I still don't like how it's just like the Jordan Clarkson show when he comes off the bench, but it is what it is. They got the W. I just look at this team and I don't know. I see Quinn Snyder as a better coach now. I've seen it. You know what I mean? I've just seen it come to me and I'm going, I think he might be a better coach than Malone.
I probably would agree with that. Now, should we go on to the Who Cares Award? I think we should move on to the Who Cares Award, which is the Toronto-Brooklyn series.
Yeah. Definitely. That just it was crazy actually though. The Raptors were up by some crazy amount. I think it was like 70-40 or something in that first game, but it ended up being a pretty tight game.
Yeah, they've all kind of been pretty tight. So, I mean, there's some big garbage minutes, and you understand why teams didn't sign Jamal Crawford. It's because play 1 game, injured for 3. Play 1 game, injured for 3.
So is he still in the bubble?
Yeah, he's still in the bubble. I think he potentially could be back for this next game if he plays. I don't know if they're going to play him. This Brooklyn team was never meant to go anywhere. They were just kind of bubble filler.
So just quickly on this to Raptors, the Raptors Nets, they were up 70-43 in the second quarter, 70-43. So Brooklyn managed to get it all the way back to basically they were down 11, and they were down 10. They were down 9 in the at the end of the third. So they managed to bring that game all the way back.
Yeah.
After being down nearly 30, they brought the game pretty much all the way back to possibly being in it. And then, the Raptors in the fourth just kind of, pulled away. But obviously, that Raptors team still looks really good. In that second round matchup, it's going to be very interesting.
It is.
But the Nets have been just, I'm all right with the Nets. They know who they are. They know they're not great. They try hard. And I'm like, it's good. I like the Nets.
Yeah, there's no expectations. Absolutely no expectations.
It's been good to watch. Should we move to which other series should we move to? Clippers.
I think
Dallas.
This is a weird one, and I'm not going to make comment on it because I still have no idea what the hell is going on in this series. That really poor Porzingis ejection in the first game for absolutely nothing. And
then I don't know. It's harsh. I would say it's harsh. I wouldn't say it's nothing. Like I've seen it reported in some of ESPN and First Take and all that sort of thing, and they're just like, "That was ridiculous." And I'm like, "Well, it wasn't ridiculous. Like it was harsh,
it's a bit soft, but yeah, it's a bit harsh."
But the block, I believe, he blew up on that, and I looked at that replay and I was like, "Man, you hit him on the arm. Like, why are you getting upset about that?" But at the same time, I still think, I thought it was a bit of a soft ejection for a playoff caliber level. But anyway, you were saying.
Yeah. I don't really know about this series, man. I really have no idea.
All I know is Doncic is so good, man. He's just so good. Just his ability to drive, score, find shooters. And it's really going to be in this series if Dallas can knock down those shots. And in game 2, they knocked down the shots. In game 1, they were quite solid. They weren't really knocking down the shots. I think they shot 15 or 43 from 3. That's not horrible. But I just look at this Clippers team now, and I'm just like, ooh, that team's a bit old, man. They looked a bit old in that game too.
Paul George is kind of like the Tobias Harris factor this year. He hasn't been great, to be honest with you. He's been injured for most of the year, and he's now more a name than actual caliber of player.
But he's kind of always been like that, though. Indiana, a lot of first round exits. I think he made a conference final, 7-8 years ago. And that first game, right, the way the Clippers won that game was exactly how I thought any kind of stress that goes on that team, that's how they're going to win. It's just kind of like, oh, right, they're just going to, get in the mid-range with Paul George and Kawhi and just get bucket after bucket after bucket and bring the game back. They kind of tried that in game 2, but it didn't really work. Paul George didn't shoot the ball well in game 2. And the first game was just like, all right, yeah, this series is over because that's just what they're going to do if they get down in the third. And then they got down in the third in game 2 and they tried to do it and they just couldn't do it. And Dallas was hitting shots. I think Hardaway, man, played really well in that game too.
So did Seth Curry game 2. Seth Curry's shooting the ball extremely well and obviously no ejection. So Porzingis was on the floor. Look, it's going to be a tough series. I mean, the Clippers could put it together out of nowhere and just wipe the floor with Dallas, but I haven't kind of seen that out of them yet in the bubble. But you can never write Kawhi off. That's, I think, one thing we have to really learn.
Yeah, I don't know if he's got the team around him, man. I don't know if that team really is the same level. Like, if you take Kawhi out, I don't think that team's the same level as Toronto without Kawhi. You know what I mean? Like, looking at this lineup, right? Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Lou Williams, Harris, Harrell, Zubac. That's not very high caliber. Like George Williams, Morris, even like getting to Morris is a very like volatile character. Harrell obviously is going to be like a hustle guy playing above his boots. Zubac, I look at him and just go, Zubac on Porzingis is like barbecue chicken for Porzingis. He's like, I'll go at him every time, thanks. Or I'll shoot a jumper, basically. And there's a few times I was switching Porzingis out onto Jackson, and it's just like 7'3" dude just shooting over Reggie Jackson, and you're just like, you got to fix this, Clippers. I don't think Patrick Beverley played the second game. Just going to double check that. I think he was out in game 2. I think he had a quad strain or something. He didn't play in game 2, which is a big loss for them. Like another guy sort of throw him on Luka. But yeah,
goon factor.
Yeah, the goon factor, I think, because they gooned Luka in the first game. And they kind of got away with it too. Like that ejection was part of it. They were hitting him a lot. Actually, one thing I noticed in this series, there's just a lot of fouling in that series where that just doesn't get called. And you're just like, man up. And I'm like, fuck, some of these other series where there's just fouls galore. And you're like, can we get those refs for this series? Like where they're actually calling these fouls. The second quarter in this game too went for a fucking age, man. Like it must have gone like half hour, maybe 40 minutes for the second quarter. And I was just like, what the hell, man? This game, like they slowed the game right down. But it still wasn't enough, man. The Clippers, I don't know. Overreaction. I can see the Clippers being upset in the first round.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, they've both signed on for a few years, so it's not as if they have to essentially go out of their way to win this. I don't think it's a win at all costs. I think the Lakers are win at all costs. I think the Bucks are win at all costs. But there's not that many other teams that kind of win at all costs. I could see the Clippers exiting and then going around next year and just being exactly the same team, but maybe better. So, yeah, I actually have no idea though. I can't call this series.
Joakim Noah came off the bench in garbage time. So you look at that signing and you're just like, why? What was the point of that? If you're going to play him in garbage time, he looks like a homeless barbarian as well with that haircut. I don't know, man. That team, I just feel like there's some holes there where we're looking at that game too, going, these are your holes. Like, what do you got? Whereas going into the series, we were looking at it going, nah, the Clips are too good for this. So I don't know. I'm enjoying that series. I think it's going to be very interesting if Dallas can sneak that third game or really put the Clippers under pressure. I can see the Clippers still coming back and winning that, but still a very interesting series. Bucks Magic obviously overreact to that crazy first game losing against Orlando.
Yeah, I think the Bucks will take the rest.
Oh
They
yeah,
did this
today
last
they
year.
just Today it was just like, oh, and that's actually the Bucks. Sweet, yeah, nice.
Yeah, just maybe a little bit of an upset. Good shooting night for Orlando, and it happens sometimes. Happens to the best teams. But yeah, we can safely say the Bucks will probably take that in 5 or 6, and we should move on to
Miami and the Pacers.
I think Miami are the dark horse of this competition.
Yeah,
I honestly do. I think that Eric Spoelstra is a fantastic coach. We know he is. They've been win at all costs for a number of years, and they haven't had the team, but they've got a whole bunch of ridiculously good shooters. Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Dragic is having a great series. They've got Jimmy Buckets, Bam Adebayo, who's probably the most improved player. They've got some good kind of deep bench and Kelly Olynyk and other guys like Jay Crowder. I mean, it's kind of a decent lineup, man, and they've got a few winners in there that have been there and done it before, and this is the year that you see potentially a who do they play? They would play the Raptors next round. Yeah, do you see this as a Bucks Heat Eastern Conference? It's a potential.
What side of the draw are they on? Are they on the same side of the draw, Heat and the Bucks?
No,
it's the opposite. Yeah.
Raptors.
Yeah, I can see a Heat Bucks ECF.
Yeah,
I don't know. I still like the Raptors the way they're playing. They've got a few needles on teams. Like they're able to get. And I think Nick Nurse is probably the best coach in the league. And he's got a squad who's quite dialed in to what they do.
Yeah,
like it's not a Philly situation where they're scrambling around trying to find things that work. They're pretty good. But this team for the Bucklets, I was about to say, the Heat, man, it's a pretty good team. And it's a pretty short rotation too. Butler, Dragic, Hero, Robertson, Adebayo, Crowder, Olynyk, Iguodala, Jones. That's the only guys that have played so far in this series.
Yeah.
That's top quality to be able to, only 9 guys so far. And then just shooters for days, man. It's crazy. Tyler Hero is the 3rd top scorer in that, 15 points a game over the 2 games. Yeah, I think they're going to be a worry. Maybe they don't have the experience yet. But looking at this Pacers team, it's a mess of a team. No Sabonis. Oladipo's out now. Miles Turner, I feel like, is always going to be a guy that's just he could have been something, but he never became anything. Brogdon's their top scorer with 19 points. TJ Warren's not. He's definitely cooled off from 3. He's only shooting 40% in this series. And then they've got some other younger guys, Jakar Sampson, the Holiday brothers. TJ's hasn't really done anything in this series, only 23 minutes. And then the rest of that, I don't think they have the same sort of power really as this Miami Heat team, which will be. I think the Heat might win in 4 or 5. To be honest,
yeah, I'm gonna say sweep after the first 2 games, and I don't think that's an overreaction
either. Quickly, we'll just go on to the Rockets. OKC. The biggest overreaction was to just see this Rockets team come out and just be like, yeah, we're fast and we're thick and try and get past us. And then they made OKC look like slow KC.
Yeah, I really thought that OKC would give them a better run for their money, but
they're so slow, man. Watching Gallo and Adams, you're just like, oh, right, yeah, they're super slow. It's crazy. This small ball Houston lineup, this. Obviously, I don't like watching them play, but having watched them just dismantle this OKC team in the first 2 games, I'm just like, fair play. They're just faster, they're thicker defensively. Gallo's struggling to just get anything going at all. I'm just looking at the series summary. And then their wing, you just see their wing defenders and just right, it's Gilgeous-Alexander and, T-Ferg and Dort and Baisley and Schroeder, and you're just all these really small guys. And you're just kind of watching it going, oh, yeah, they're just really not a fast team at all. And not a fast, thick team like Houston. And then James Harden, obviously, is back. James Harden's just yeah, this is a little rope-a-dope for you guys. Now I'm just going to, go Super Saiyan again.
Yeah, I just don't want Houston to win. It's just shit basketball.
I know. But I've softened a little bit. I'm just okay, fair play. The amount of times they just leave shooters open in the corner, but this OKC team where you're just in the corner, don't help off the corner, and it's a corner 3. Just
yeah, it's funny because the only team that's just built to whoop Houston every single time is Philly, because Houston can't get inside because they're too Chubb, and Philly defends the 3-point line extremely well. And so they just dismantle Houston every time. But that's the only team that they can just systematically dismantle every single time. It's bizarre. It's bizarre.
But yeah, man, this OKC went from me just being like, this is going to be very interesting, see how they play, to like the first maybe 15 minutes of that first game and just being like, oh yeah, Adams and Gallo are just fucking slow, man, and they can't keep up and they're just getting rinsed. And one thing, like Steven Adams' rim protection isn't good at all. Like that's one thing that I kind of just went, center, top quality, has a decent, attacking game. But then watching him in this series, you're just like, his rim protection, he's always late on rotations, he can't get up too. And I'm like, oh yeah, I just forgot that he's not a great rim protector. And that's a huge issue against this Houston team when they get inside, and they get inside a lot. Austin Rivers today fucking had a blinder too, where you're just like, fucking Austin Rivers, man. Why are you letting him have a blinder, man? But fair play to him. That dunk he had, man, was nuts.
Yeah, the best one is that game where his old man was going absolutely nuts and he was calling for his ejection.
Yeah, it's nuts. I think Doc Rivers got ejected in that game too?
Yeah, he did. His son was going, eject him.
It's pretty funny. I think he might be married to Steph Curry's sister too, Austin Rivers. So a little bit of
just keep it in the basketball family.
Yeah, what's 6 degrees of separation there? But yeah, so what do you reckon? Houston in 4 now. We're changing our
I think OKC will pip one, but yeah, it looks like it's going to be a Houston series.
I think it's going to be a sweep. I just can't see Houston. Like I just can't see OKC going on a tear and getting that 120 piece and keeping Houston quiet, because Houston want the game to speed up, and when the game speeds up, the Thunder just can't play in that style, and then that's the way you get points against Houston, is you match them for pace and you match them for scoring, and then that's kind of how you beat that team. You don't beat them by holding them to like 90 points, except when you're Philly in that last game of the bubble. But
yeah, but the Philly did that a couple of times. Yeah, and the Bucks can do it as well. The Bucks has some length defending and can do it. But yeah, there's a couple of teams. I think probably Houston would like to match up against a Heat or a Toronto, and would not like to match up against a Bucks. And I think Boston, they don't. There's certain teams that they would match up well against, and there's certain teams that they wouldn't. But let's go on to the last series, where we kind of went, the Lakers, they might get smashed. And then
whoa, everyone went, whoa, the biggest overreaction of the bubble so far. Whoa. And then in this second game, it was like, and AD is here.
Yeah, AD is here, and Damian Lillard's finger is gone. And
what was is that a full broken finger?
No, dislocation. But I mean, you're not playing the same as a shooter on a dislocated finger. It's just,
Steph made the finals last year with a dislocated finger.
They didn't win it, so what do you want?
It's true. Leaves game 2 with dislocated finger. I saw him throwing the towel up against the thing, being real upset. I didn't actually see what happened. All I saw was him like just being really upset, throwing the towel at the wall, walking backstage, into the back of the bubble area, whatever it is. So that's obviously a huge blow. But again, that first game where he was hitting those crazy shots, and you're just like, whoa, oh my God, how great is it? And then in the second game, he's just not hitting those shots, and you're just like, they're stupid shots, man.
Yeah,
ultimately he's going to miss them eventually, and then you're just going to be just like, they're stupid shots.
Shooters go on runs, shooters go dry. That's always been the way. There's not much you can do about that.
It's great. I'm not saying don't shoot him if you can shoot him from the logo. Like, yeah, definitely. But if you look at this game too, today, even before he had that issue with the finger, what's he shooted? He shot 1 of 7 from 3.
Yeah. And
some of those were bad shots. Like, if he misses those logo shots, you're like, that's a bad shot, man. Like, come on. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But when they go in, it looks great. And, shooters, you live by the 3, you die by the 3. But at the same time, I don't think this Portland team, coming off a short turnaround, they don't have the juice. You know what I mean? Like it's
roster.
Yeah, they don't have that juice. Like CJ, he didn't really play that well in game 1. He played all right in game 2, but not like, it's not, I'm gonna be the guy that wins this game. Like, really, that's Lillard, and Lillard, if Lillard doesn't have a game like that. And then you look at the rest of their, like, Gary Trent wasn't great today. Hazonia, Whiteside, all of these guys where you're just like, you can't count on those guys.
No.
And I think their fairy tale is going to come to an end. AD today, but just AD today was just fucking dominant, man. I love watching him. Honestly, it's shooting threes every time. They were leaving him open, trying to switch him out, daring him to shoot, and he was knocking him down. And then he's just beasting inside as well. Just phenomenal. 13 of 21, 31 points. And he had those 31 points really before the end of the third quarter, really.
Yeah. This kind of game over garbage time.
Crazy game one. These game one numbers were crazy. I think he had like 23 and 17 assists or something. Let me just double check that. LeBron, 23 points, 16 assists, 17 rebounds. That's nuts.
It's just absurd.
That is nuts. And some of those dimes were just like, in a game you won, like that performance would have just been outrageous in a game that they win.
Yeah.
Because some of those dimes, man, were just picking this Portland team apart where you're just like, whew, what a dime. Like he had this one where kind of dribbled in, JaVale got this seal and he like passed it with English. Like it was like this little sort of like flick pass that spun back to JaVale and JaVale finished it. I'm just like, God damn, man, what a dime. So I wonder if, going forward through this series, he's going to get a little bit better. But yeah, that first game, those numbers were just outrageous. And his ability to like split, like, so if like previewing a series against Portland, against Houston, because obviously they're on the same side of the draw, he's just going to pick them apart. Like I feel like, I don't think they've got the screening, the movement and the ability that the Warriors had to pick Houston apart. But at the same time, LeBron's got the passing. So if they can get kind of any sort of, split trapping, shorting pick and rolls going, like LeBron's just going to feast. He's going to dominate and pick them apart. So that's one thing that OKC just doesn't have.
No. 6'10" point guard that can just see over everyone and a 7'1" ball handler that can shoot threes and just dominate in the paint.
So yeah, going forward, there's going to be some more interesting games that come thick and fast, man. I'm enjoying it. It's been great to watch so far.
We'll come back sometime next week after the wrap of the first.
Yeah, we'll come back at the end of the first series. At the end of when Philly and the Jazz, those series, we'll wrap them up. Because I think they're going rapid fire with these games. Like if a series finishes,
every 2 days, yeah.
Well, if a series finishes, then I think they're just going to line the 2 games up for the teams, and if they're ready to go, it's just like you're in, go. Not like last time where they used to, or last year, or the years before where they used to wait. I was like, oh no, a couple of days, and then we'll match these series up, and then you'll go. Like now, I think it's just going to be Toronto's done, Miami's done, go.
Next day, go.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. Yeah, we'll come back next week, and as always, you can like, share, and subscribe on Twitch, on YouTube, on iTunes, Podcast Addict, and SoundCloud, and anywhere else you can get your podcasts on RSS feed. That's it.
Good night, everyone.
Nighty night. It's a late night, but yeah, we'll be back next week.
Cheers.
All
See you
right,
later.
take it easy, peeps.
Bye.